Mayo experience coming to you live. Well, not really live. I'm live. You're not watching this live, but it's from our temporary studios. Soon enough, we'll be in the true Pat Mayo experience, so you can get the full experience of the show. Joining me on the line today to not only break down the injury report going into week 2, but also make some DK ownership guesses for who the chalk plays are going to be, and maybe try to come up with some pivot plays for the giant tournaments for the week 2 contest, especially the Millionaire Maker. It's Pearce Dietrich from DK TV. What's going on, man?
If this isn't the full experience, then what is it? What am I here for?
Well, listen, I asked you to be. You need to get your reps in now before we get to the big thing, and you're on the big screen, and I'm just gonna sit here yelling at you.
Well, you can go ahead and start yelling at me now.
All right, well, I'm sure that we'll get to that at some point. The first news note that I wanted to go off of, though, was the Thursday Nighter. After the game, A.J. Green came out, and he was mad. Ended up 8 targets, only 5 catches. Another kind of mediocre game. He hasn't turned out to like duds in a row, but especially not like where you drafted him for season-long leagues. I mean, he was a first-round pick. He is not producing that way so far. Now he's complaining that he needs to get the ball a lot more. Generally speaking, for receivers, this turns out really well, and I'm getting a lot of questions so far this morning about like, oh, should I sell AJ Green? Now, I'm not sure if people are unfamiliar with the concept of buy low and sell high. Selling low is rarely a good idea, so I think I would wait it out with AJ Green just to see what he ends up doing. I think he's going to end up with double-digit targets most games going forward. I'm not going to panic. In fact, I would probably try to buy low on him a little bit. What's your take on it? What would you do with AJ Green right now?
Well, we talked about this on Matchups Breakdown the other day, but right before the game, Bengals' offensive line is terrible, and they're just not getting the ball to A.J. Green. We said that after game 1, and the same thing happened in game 2. I don't think you're ever going to get A.J. Green enough touches. He's never going to be happy, but you can't sell now. But I don't see the offensive line getting any better. I think one of the benefits, though, to the Bengals being so bad, if you haven't been season long, is they're going to get blown out some games. They're going to have to play catch-up and just throw a lot. So you're going to get some points there. He's not going to be completely worthless, but you're not going to get the A.J. Green you might have thought you were getting. If you can get him from somebody, go for it.
I mean, if we had to kind of look at it from, like, who would you rather have the rest of the season, Beckham or A.J. Green?
I mean, right now, with the Beckham news and just his attitude, I think I'd take A.J. Green.
Like, what about, like, Dez or A.J. Green? Jordy or A.J. Green?
I think I'd take Jordy, and I don't know about Dez. I still think A.J. Green's going to get a lot of garbage points. If the Bengals are out of it week 13, 14, 16 in the playoffs, he could still score points where those other guys might rest a little bit.
I mean, that's true. And next week, at week 3, especially on DraftKings, when the salaries end up coming out, A.J. Green's probably going to be deflated a little bit. And the Bengals are in Green Bay next week, which is a tremendous matchup for him. And the only plays that really worked for Dalton on Thursday night was just throw jump balls to A.J. Green in triple coverage, and he comes down with it. They should have just done that every time.
It'll work. He's going to get 2 games against the Browns. I know the Browns aren't the flaming dumpster fire they have been in the past, and he'll get to play the Ravens again. I know it didn't work out the first time, but the corners for the Ravens aren't really that sharp either. He should have done better. The ship's going to right itself, but this is just a tough time if you're an A.J. Green owner.
Yeah, it might be a decent time to buy low on some of these Bengals where they play in the Thursday Nighter. Now they get 10 days off to kind of reassess the situation, maybe try to do some patchwork on the offensive line to keep Andy Dalton upright. What if it's like one of these like breakout wide receivers from week 1, whether it's like Tyreek Hill or Stefon Diggs? If I offered you Tyreek Hill or I offered you Stefon Diggs for A.J. Green, would you take that?
I would, because I don't think they had a breakout week 1, but they were pretty good last year. They just weren't completely consistent. I think this will be a big year for Stefon Diggs. Minnesota, we only see 1 game, but Diggs had double-digit receptions several times. We know about Tyreek Hill's speed. Wasn't really worked into the offense too much last year. He was just kind of a return guy. So he's going to get better each week. He's going to have that big play potential. I would take both of those guys.
See, I think I would still bank on the upside of A.J. Green in that situation. I know that Hill and Diggs got off to the big week 1. I know that they've shown flashes in the past, but maybe Tyreek Hill is a game breaker, and he's a lot better than I had him ranked coming into the preseason, just based on the way that he's going to be used in this offense. But I find it really hard to turn my back on A.J. Green, who is healthy. The skills are all there. The situation's not the best, but if the Bengals are going to be bad, they're going to be throwing a lot. And if he's going to start complaining now about not getting targets, he's going to start seeing them in droves in the near future.
One of my biggest worries with Green, and since he's been drafted right next to Julio Jones, is you put them side by side, and Green is just this lanky, skinny dude, and he just looks like he's just one injury away from his career being over. That's always worried me. And he was banged up last year, too.
Yeah, I mean, he's back now. He's fine. He's going to be okay. Okay, let's say I offered you target monster DeAndre Hopkins, who's now currently on pace for like 240 targets, except his catch percentage is like 40%.
I, I don't know. DeAndre Hopkins was just so terrible last year. I would stay with A.J. Green. He still has Andy Dalton, and their weapons on that team, they're going to get a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the big thing with Hopkins right now is, and I play in a league where it's PPR, but yards are actually kind of discriminated against. Instead of it being 10 points or 10 yards for every 1 point, it's 20 yards for every 1 point. So DeAndre Hopkins would actually hold a lot of value in that league. But I think that people should start getting prepared for a 20 target day where he catches 7 balls for like 67 yards. Like the big plays and the touchdowns, I don't feel like are going to be there for DeAndre Hopkins. Weirdly enough, I think that his stat line is going to mimic like 80% of what Golden Tate's does for the rest of the season.
Well, we got to see if Golden Tate's going to be healthy as well.
Oh, Golden Tate's going to be fine. He said he's going to be fine. We'll get to him more down the injury report. Let's get to the full injuries, though. Beckham's the big one that we need to talk about. He claimed that his ankle was a 6 to 8 week injury. Now, this happened like 3 weeks ago, so we're almost halfway through that. It looks like he is going to play on Monday night, but after this news came up, people were like, oh, are we so sure about that? What do you do with Beckham? I think if you're playing like the primetime slate, he's going to be like the trendy contrarian play because it's primetime. If he's on the field, I doubt they're going to try to run him out there to get injured once again. But the Giants' offense looks kind of terrible, and it's looked pretty terrible dating back to last season. They haven't scored over 20 points in 7 straight games, including the playoffs last year and including week 1. So what do we do with Beckham? Let's address this from a season-long perspective to begin with. Like, if you have Beckham and he's one of your receivers, like, how far do you go down your bench if you don't know on Sunday morning if he's going to play on Monday night and be like, you know what, I'm going to bench Beckham for this guy? Is there, like, sort of a level that you get to, or do you just say, you know what, I'm rolling the dice on Odell Beckham?
Well, I guess I'm a little different from you here. I don't think he's going to play. He said he's not 100%. He's not close to 100%. Sure, he could go out there not being 100%, but there are other weapons in that offense that they can go to. I just don't see him putting up big points. And when you got a receiver who comes out and says, it's a 6, when have you ever heard someone say, hey, it's a 6 to 8 week injury? And I don't know, you need to talk to my doctors. He just doesn't seem confident that he wants to get out there. He wants to get on the field. I mean, I'm reading between the lines here, but you watch that interview that he did and talking about a 6 to 8 week injury. And, well, you got to talk to my doctors. I don't know what's going on. He just seemed not very sure. He didn't seem like a guy who wanted to get out there, wanted to help his team, wanted to catch passes. I don't want to spend $8,000 in daily fantasy on him. And season long, if you have a decent replacement, I guess a second-tier receiver, I would feel much more comfortable with that. He doesn't have that fire. And one of the things that's made Beckham the guy he is that he's a passionate guy who goes out there and kicks stuff on the sidelines and bumps into things. But he just doesn't have any fire for me. And I don't know. I can't get on board with him this week.
What if the choice between, I guess Chris Hogan's in a really good matchup. Let's say, like, if you had the choice not knowing about Beckham on Sunday morning, you're like, hey, I have to start Chris Hogan or I have to start Odell Beckham. Which one would you start?
Oh, it's Hogan in a heartbeat.
Hogan in a heartbeat?
Maybe it sounds crazy on paper to tell someone that at the beginning of the season, but Hogan doesn't have any injury problems. He's going to be one of the few healthy receivers in New England in a shootout. I don't think Beckham does anything. Well, first of all, you've got other weapons there, but they're also not really doing much. Eli Manning is, I can't really rely on that guy.
All right, so what if it was like Sammy Watkins or Odell Beckham?
No, okay. Probably going to roll out Odell Beckham in that case. I do not like Sammy Watkins.
All right, what about like T.Y. Hilton or...
No way, T.Y. Hilton? Would you play T.Y. Hilton?
No, I wouldn't play him. I'm just trying to get a gauge of where you're at with him. I think for me, like,
Cooper Kupp?
I'm scrolling down my rankings right now, and I guess it depends on the Sherman injury, and maybe they can move Pierre Garçon off of him. But in my rankings right now, I have like Devontae Parker at 31, Deshaun Jackson at 32, Pierre Garçon 33, Jamison Crowder 34, Jeremy Maclin 35, then Sammy Watkins. Like, I don't necessarily know if I'd want to play Maclin or just chance it out with Odell Beckham, but I think I would probably play... Oh, would I play Jamison Crowder? That's a tough one for me. Like, would you go Pierre Garçon or would you go Odell Beckham?
Probably lean Pierre Garçon.
Yeah, so I think in the updated version of my rankings, I'm going to move Beckham down into that territory if we do not know what his ankle status and what his status for Monday night is. If they say he's going to play, I'm going to trust in the fact that he's Odell Beckham and he's not running out there to be a decoy just to try to get himself injured some more. I think if he plays in full. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree, but I still think he doesn't play. We thought last week, at least the reports were that it was leaning towards him playing, and here we are again, it's leaning towards him playing, and we're not going to find out on Sunday. I would go the safe route and take the player that you absolutely know is going to be in the game, is going to score some points. You could get absolutely burnt starting Odell Beckham in season-long fantasy with him just not playing. And then if he does play, there is no guarantee because he said he's not 100%. He said it's a 6 to 8 week injury. They even said, someone said it was a 4 to 8 week injury, which, I mean, I don't really know if that's better or worse. I mean, I guess the 4 is smaller than the 6, but the 8 is bigger than the 6. So I don't want Odell Beckham.
Well, I guess one of the ways that you can kind of massage this a little bit, if you can afford to put Beckham into your flex spot, it opens up more opportunities if you do want to wait. But I guess if you had Golladay, Marvin Jones, Sterling Shepard, Brandon Marshall at receiver, and you couldn't move into your flex, because if you do move into your flex, then you can use Abdullah or Riddick or Perkins or Vereen or Ingram or Ebron or one of those guys. If one of those guys is available, you can wait it out and plug them in at the last second. That's not an ideal move, but it is sort of a safety switch. I mean, Sterling Shepard's obviously going to be a lot better this week if Odell Beckham is not on the roster, or just not on the field, so he's going to see a higher percent of the market share, that kind of thing. So I think I would wait it out if I had one of those guys, although Brandon Marshall just scares the shit out of me at this point, so I don't even know what
Brandon
to make.
Marshall is done.
Done? You think he's done?
Over. Yes.
No. He just doesn't know the offense yet.
So he learned it this week?
Maybe he actually tried this week.
I think a lot of his stats last year were just, what we're going to see from Robbie Anderson this year and any of the Jets receivers. Just they're down 2 touchdowns and just flinging the ball around.
Yeah.
I mean, in high-pressure situations, in the clutch, I'm not going to Brandon Marshall.
Yeah, listen, I have Sterling Shepard ranked ahead of Brandon Marshall so far this week. I have Brandon Marshall as basically a do-not-play type of guy, but if you were waiting out for Odell Beckham and you didn't have better options, it's better than playing nobody, I think.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, Marshall's better than nobody.
Yeah,
just a smidge.
Yeah, unless he ends up fumbling, and then you're screwed. Then he scores negative points. Anyway, I want to move on from this situation that I've been monitoring. John Brown hasn't practiced all week with a quad injury, and it's kind of shaping up like he might not play against the Colts in a really good matchup. So if you take him off the field, now you're looking at more market share for Larry Fitzgerald, and he had a ton already. But you're going to see an increased snap count from Jerron Brown and J.J. Nelson, because Jermaine Gresham is also dealing with the rib injury. He hasn't practiced all week, so Friday is really going to tell the story with both of these guys. If they don't practice on Friday, chances are that they're not going to play this weekend. And with the Beckham thing, if he doesn't practice on Saturday for the Monday Nighter, he ain't playing. So this is a situation where without David Johnson around to have that sort of outlet in the backfield, what do you make of the Arizona offense? Because Carson Palmer looked atrocious last week, but this is the best spot of all spots. Indoors, at Indy, Vontae Davis not playing. We just saw Jared Goff light up the Colts defense. I think Palmer can do the same, and if you're looking for like a triple stack, Fitzgerald, Palmer, and J.J. Nelson sounds very enticing to me.
The safety also for the Colts, Razell Butler, he might be out as well, so that'll make it even easier for Larry Fitzgerald and J.J. Nelson. But one of the problems is Carson. I mean, I didn't watch the game, but I've read enough articles and listened to the podcast this week to hear people just say Carson Palmer looked absolutely terrible. But and I don't have any numbers to back this up, but we've seen Palmer have bad games in the past. And if Palmer has a bad game and needs to get it together, you think the obvious option the next game would be just throw the ball nonstop to Larry Fitzgerald. I mean, that's a huge way to pretty much get back on track. And that's what I would do. Fitzgerald looked fine last week. I know he had a little bit of an injury, but supposedly he's fine. So I would imagine that Fitzgerald's going to get a heavy workload. I don't know what to do with the running back situation. Kerlin Williams is too expensive, and now they've got 3 guys off the street who might get some playing time. I mean, Chris Johnson knows the playbook, so he'll get a couple opportunities. It's just going to be whichever running back happens to be on the field when they move the ball, that's guy probably going to be the hot hand they go with. I think Larry Fitzgerald fine. J.J. Nelson, I like that as well. But that's about it. If you want to get cute, there is Palmer there, but that means you're fading the top-notch quarterbacks. I mean, maybe in GPPs, but Larry Fitzgerald seems fine to me. He was solid last week. Maybe his ownership will dip because people are expecting a lot more from him. It's the Colts. They're bad.
Yeah, and the best part about his price this week, I actually like him a lot in both cash and GPP. You don't necessarily need to pay up that much in cash games if you don't want to. There's a lot of good floor options at a cheaper price depending on how you want to structure your DraftKings teams. But he's just surrounded by that Tyreek Hill and not Martavis Bryant, Stephon Diggs level, and I just feel like those guys are going to generate a lot of ownership, and Larry Fitzgerald might get overlooked just because people watched the Cardinals. Man, I watched every snap of that game, and Carson Palmer did look horrible. He should have thrown like 8 pick sixes, and he was trying to kill Larry Fitzgerald half the time, throwing him the ball. And it's not like the Lions were generating a ton of pass rush. He had time to throw. I think I can go back to the well one more time here, knowing that there's going to be deflated ownership in these guys. And in my season-long leagues, I started J.J. Nelson last week, which looked like the world's worst move until like the last garbage time drive. I think that if there is no John Brown, he becomes, I don't want to say a must-start, but I think he'd be a guy like we talked about Odell Beckham. If we don't know about Beckham, I think I'd start J.J. Nelson instead of him.
Yeah, he's a burner. He's got big play potential. He's going to get a bump in usage, too, because there's just nobody left, which we really don't really count on for J.J. Nelson. We're not looking for a lot of quantity or a lot of targets. We just want to get a couple big plays is what he's done in the past. But now he's going to get a lot of opportunities to nail that big play. There are other cheap receiver options is the only reason that I would stay away from him. And plus, his quarterback is still Carson Palmer. The matchup's there. He's going to be low-owned, but he's not in one of the premier shootouts is probably the biggest knock against him.
All right, next injury, Danny Amendola is still dealing with a concussion. He also has a knee problem. I mean, again, Friday is going to dictate the story with him. I don't think he's going to play. There are already reports coming out of Boston that, Rex Burkhead is going to get some more slot work because he's a very capable receiver. So this means Chris Hogan is probably going to end up, he played 90% of the snaps last week. He's going to be on the field the entire time. Brandon Cooks is going to be on the outside. They might run some more 2 tight end sets, and maybe Dwayne Allen gets some more run as a part of the offense along with Gronk. But, if you're targeting this game, it's the highest projected point total of the week. What options are, I don't want to say they need to be your favorite plays of the week, but let's say you're building 20 lineups. How many of the guys from this game will you be using from the Patriots side of the ball?
2 or 3. 2 or 3 for me. I don't know where you would go. Tom Brady, you can take Tom Brady by himself with all the different weapons. And the Amendola injury really shakes things up. We don't know for sure who's going to be in the slot. We don't know who's going to be lining up outside. The only consistent thing we know is he has a tight end that he's played with forever, which is Gronkowski, but he's really expensive. Gillislee is going to poach some touchdowns, but can we count on Chris Hogan? And Dorsett doesn't know the playbook. We saw Michael Floyd come here at the end of last season and do absolutely nothing. And Dorsett's been here for a week or two, maybe a little bit more. What's he going to do? I want to get... Go ahead.
Dorsett's also not good, so that doesn't help the situation at all either. So for me, I'm like Brady and Gronk and Cooks. I feel like you can use those wherever you want. You're not going to use Gronk and cash at 6,900. Nice, but there's just cheaper tight ends. That's not where you need to spend your money this week. But if you want to do a triple stack with those 3 in GPPs, I like that. I like James White at $4,000 just for the floor. If it's going to be a high passing game, in GPPs, you're going to need him to score a touchdown, which, like you mentioned with Gillislee, he's going to come in and steal all these goal line carries. But if James White can actually break one and find his way into the end zone, we've seen James White post these 8 for 97 games before. I feel like this is one of the games where he could do that. He played double the amount of snaps of anyone last week, over 50% of offensive plays for the Patriots, and this just feels like another game where that could be the case.
It's running backs for the Patriots. We've been dealing with this for 3 years. We never know. We narrow it down to 2 guys, and then ends up being the 3rd guy. It could be Rex Burkhead going back into the backfield, and they go shotgun the whole game, and they do nothing. It's not a fun thing to predict the New England Patriots running game. There's better places to go. When I look at these shootout games, I think a lot of regular players, and we'll try to project ownership later, but the running backs in these games scare me away. I like the quarterbacks. I like the receivers. The running backs, that takes a lot of thinking, and I don't think a lot of people want to dig that deep.
Well, if you can find the right one from this game, it's going to pay off. I would burn a lineup or 2 on with a Rex Burkhead team just to see if he ends up playing that Amendola role and he's just lining up at receiver the entire time. It would just be very valuable for his price at your running back spot. I don't expect that's going to happen, but if you can get, let's say, 30 snaps from the slot, that could provide huge dividends because obviously, the Saints suck on defense anyway, and they're just not game planning for this at all.
If you had to pick a running back in the shootouts, which one would you feel the most comfortable with?
In this one, I'd pick James White just because I think there's going to be a lot of passing.
I'm going to be Team Gillislee.
Gillislee has a better opportunity to score 4 touchdowns in this game, which is the upside that you play with him.
That's it. I'm just looking for touchdowns, really.
I mean, if that's the case, then yes, it's definitely Gillislee. But if I can... Go
Well,
ahead.
if you go with James White, do you feel like you have to play Tom Brady? If I take Gillislee, I can pretty much go anywhere I want with quarterback. It kind of frees me up a little bit.
I mean, I don't feel like I have to play Tom Brady. I think that pairing them together would make a lot of sense based on his skill set. But, I mean, if I play Jordy Nelson, do I have to play Aaron Rodgers? I don't. I mean, I think the fact that you play James White is that he's $4,000, and it just allows you to do a lot up top with your lineups.
That's a good point. Possibly.
All right. One more injury, big one to get to. Allen Robinson had his ACL surgery. Apparently it went very well, and the recovery is going to be great for next season, so we're not too concerned about that anymore. Marquise Lee and Allen Hurns are projected to come in and play the majority of snaps on offense for a team that does not want to throw the ball all that much. But like we saw from the Texans' offense last night, they're just not good at scoring. Tennessee, they're going to be able to put a few more points on the board against Saxonville. No matter how good their defense is, I feel like the Titans are actually going to score somewhat here, forcing Blake Bortles to go to the air. I know you like Bortles as a cheap alternative to save some money this week in GPPs, but if you had to go with Hurns or Lee, who would it be? Because I'm leaning Marquise Lee because he runs these short A-dot routes. It's really hard to throw an interception to Marquise Lee, and he's very good after the catch, so maybe he can make something with nothing.
Well, I love Marquise Lee as wide receiver number 3, or when Allen Robinson's basically playing decoy and drawing all the attention. I want to, we've seen Allen Robinson do nothing last year, and now that he's out, we think, no big deal. He really didn't do anything. But he did. He drew the attention of the defense, and so Marquise Lee was in a premium matchup. It reminds me a lot of, it's about 10 years ago, Muhsin Muhammad, when Steve Smith was breaking onto the scene, and basically the Panthers used Muhammad as a decoy every week. And Muhammad got so mad that one day he went to practice with a different jersey, and his name was D.Coy. And then the next year they sent him off to the Bears. But that's really what reminds me of Allen Robinson. He's just been a decoy, and that's going to hurt Marquise Lee and Allen Hurns this week. I like Marquise Lee, but he's got a good matchup against Tennessee. If I had to pick one, he would be one, and he is really cheap. And Bortles is going to have to throw to somebody. They're going to probably run 2 wide receivers and a tight end. Mercedes Lewis isn't going to do anything. I don't mind Lee, especially if you're paying up at quarterback and chasing those big shootouts.
Yeah, I mean, at $3,800, it's almost like the White situation. You don't need to cram all these cheap guys into your lineup if you're trying to mix and match from the bottom of the salary cap. I think these are players that you need to keep on your radar if you do want to pay up for similar type guys at the very top and go to, the Julio Joneses, Antonio Browns, Le'Veon Bells of the world. If that's what you fancy this week, I think that makes a lot of sense. The rest of the injury reports, some on defense that are of note. Golden Tate is actually the first one. He is dealing with a finger injury. He was limited on Thursday. Richard Sherman did not practice Thursday with a hamstring injury, and Jason Verrett didn't either with a knee problem on Thursday. If both those guys are in danger of missing week 2, I mean, we already talked about Garcon a little bit, how it would open up the door for him if Sherman was the one going to be locking him down. But if Verrett's not around, I think Devontae Parker would get a boost, at least a few more looks for me. But I think that Verrett's going to end up playing, therefore I would prefer Jarvis Landry. What do you think?
Do you really think Verrett's going to play? I mean, he had major surgery last year, missed the whole season. He's played in 1 full game since then, and then it's an undisclosed injury. I'm assuming some sort of swelling, some sort of complication. I don't risk him going back out. It sounds really serious to me. So if Verrett's not in there, yeah, of course I like Parker. I don't know if I'd be gutsy or crazy enough to play Jay Cutler, but Parker's probably in play.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of, I was big on the Chargers defense this week, and I still am, because I think the thing with Verrett is going to be where they're just seeing how his knee is reacting, and they're just being like, yo, take it easy, you look good week 1, let's not do any more damage here, and let's quell this problem as much as we can until Sunday, and then get you back out here. I'm curious to see what happens at Friday practice, but he is a name to monitor going forward, because if he doesn't play, that kind of changes the approach that the Chargers need to take on defense and opens up some more opportunities for the Dolphins receivers. Other guys, I already already mentioned Jermaine Gresham with the ribs. He did not practice Thursday. Vontae Davis didn't practice. Marcus Wheaton for the Bears is back at limited practice. I think he's their only receiver over 4'9", so that could be somewhat interesting. Jordan Howard, shoulder is limited on Thursday. Terrence Williams did not practice, so Bryce Butler might get some extra run. Vance McDonald left with a back injury from Steelers practice, so maybe some more snaps for Jesse James coming off the big week 1. And Brian Beluga is dealing with an ankle injury. He had the flu. He was sent home Thursday. If he's not around for Aaron Rodgers, would you downgrade Aaron Rodgers at all, or do you just don't care?
I kind of don't care, but it seems like it's just the flu. I don't know the situation with the ankle, but if it's just the flu, he should be fine by Sunday. If they send him home, if the ankle, he'll play. I don't. It didn't seem like it was very serious from what I was reading.
Okay, all right, let's get to the fansharesports.com tags to try to project out some ownership at each position for DraftKings, at least for the Millionaire Maker slate for week 2. So let's go with running backs first. Number 1 on that list in terms of starts, not just overall tags, but starts, is Ty Montgomery. He has 36 start tags. The next closest person to him in number 2 is Jacquiz Rodgers. He only has 18 start tags. So everyone is playing Ty Montgomery this week. He seems super safe based on the amount of volume that he's going to get. He played 74 of 80 snaps for the Packers in week 1, and the only reason he came off the field was because of a brief injury. Then he came back in a game projected with the second highest total of the week. Everything is lining up for Ty Montgomery. Does there become a point in large tournament GPP or large scale GPPs where his ownership gets up to like 40% and you just don't play him anymore?
I don't think he's going to get to 40%. Last week one of the top guys we saw was Zach Ertz at 35, and that was basically with the entire summer of people talking up. I don't even know what his fan share tag start was, but I'm sure it was up there. Everyone was playing Zach Ertz. Ty Montgomery is going to be pretty high, but I don't think he gets to 40. I'd say 35-ish. And another point is everyone got burnt by paying up for running backs last week, so that makes Ty Montgomery even more appealing. And let's say a big-name running back does go off, or an expensive one. They're not going to bury him point per dollar-wise. And if a cheap running back like Jacquiz Rodgers goes off, probably still not going to bury Ty Montgomery out there. He just seems like he can't lose. I don't know if he's going to score enough for you in GPPs, but as they say, it's basically a free square. So you just plug him in and try to nail all the rest of your picks. I think you talked about this before. Chalk is fine. You just don't have to play all 8-10 chalk plays. You just play a couple of them, and this seems like an easy one to take.
Yeah, I'm with you. I really don't care what his ownership gets up to. I mean, obviously he's a cash game stalwart based on his price, but I'll also be using him in GPPs as well. I'm sure I'm going to play a few lineups that don't have him in it just to be somewhat contrarian, but if the field's going to have 40%, I'm probably going to have 75% Ty Montgomery and be on my way. So Ty Montgomery is number 1 on that list. Then it goes to Jacquiz Rodgers. Then Melvin Gordon is number 3. Marshawn Lynch is number 4. Then Buck Allen, Le'Veon Bell, Kerwin Williams, Tariq Cohen, James White, and Ezekiel Elliott is the top 10. Is there anyone from that list? Like, I'm not seeing LaShawn McCoy's name on that list. I mean, he gets all the volume. Carolina's defense is all right, but if Shady's going to get 30 touches, is he kind of shaping up to be the number 1 pivot player? Is going to be like Kareem Hunt against the Eagles? Is there anyone that wasn't named on that list that you think you can pivot to that might present a lot of upside?
Running back wise, I don't know. I mean, I think Melvin Gordon's the obvious number 2. I'm kind of surprised that Jacquiz Rodgers. I'm not. He's getting pushed heavily, and by the end of the week, he's going to be a very popular play. He was your sleeper about 2 days ago, and I think he has awoken, and now everyone is on the Jacquiz Rodgers bandwagon. But yeah, you're right, LaShawn McCoy. No one is talking about the guy who just has been scoring tons of fantasy points the last couple of years. Maybe Le'Veon Bell. Was Le'Veon Bell on that list?
Yeah, Le'Veon Bell was number 6.
Number 6. All right, so he's up there kind of high. I'm more surprised by Buck Allen. I don't get it. He had 20 carries last week for 71 yards. That's really not that exciting. And it was in a game where basically they were just going to run and run and run. And he had the game under his control. And he pretty much didn't do anything with it. I don't know if the Browns are an easier target. They might actually be tougher than the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because I think one of the allures of Buck Allen is his history of being a good pass catcher, and without Danny Woodhead being around, that if this game does become competitive, and they do have to pass, then he's going to soak up a lot of really cheap receptions along the way. And if he is going to play, let's say, 50% of the snaps and get 50% of the carries along with it, even if it's not goal line work, that you can find a way to upside. Based on his price right now, he doesn't have to do too much to return value, especially in cash games. I don't love him in tournaments, though, because I think that his upside is limited.
Is this just another result of people want to play the receivers and quarterbacks from those expensive shootouts? They're not quite sure about the running backs in those games, so then they're going to go save elsewhere with Jacquizz or Buck Allen or go to the bottom for a running back somewhere else. I think that's what we're going to see.
One guy that I kind of like, I liked him last week, and I paired him with the Jags defense in a correlation play. That was Leonard Fournette. Now he's $6,500. No one's talking about him again. He's playing Tennessee. That's never any good, and my phone's going off, and that's kind of crazy. But we talked about volume. We talked about these receivers, and that Allen Robinson is hurt. You know that they want to run the ball, and I mean, Tennessee's defense is more susceptible to being passed on than run on. But if they get inside the red zone, I feel like they're just going to run the ball 3 times with Fournette, and maybe you can luck your way into 25 carries, 100 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He's going to get some catches. Like, would you pivot to Leonard Fournette at running back out of any of these guys?
I put Leonard Fournette right there with Melvin Gordon this week. I don't like the matchup for Leonard Fournette. You want to pass on the Titans. You don't really want to run the ball because they're good at stopping it. But I kind of got them neck and neck. Melvin Gordon's obviously above him, but yeah, you could pivot to Leonard Fournette. No one's talking about him again. Talking about the Jags D, people are burying Blake Bortles. Yeah, why not? He's going to get some more receptions. He's going to be more active in the passing game. He has to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think he has a pretty good baked-in floor, and then you get that he sort of presents everything that Gillislee does, except for a primo matchup, but he's going to be on the field a lot more, but he's that guy that you know that if they get in close, that they're going to call his number and give him the ball. I really like that potential, and if for the second straight week that no one is talking about him, I mean, he's coming off a tougher matchup last week and performed pretty well, and you know the volume is going to be there for him. Plus, you mentioned, I mean, he's going to get more receptions. That's fine. I like Fournette as a tournament play.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to... He should work out really well in tournaments because, again, people are going to pay up at quarterback. People probably going to take 1 or 2 of those expensive receivers, and it's just going to be hard to fit him in. So maybe you go medium range at quarterback. Dare we say Carson Palmer? Palmer and Fournette could be a pretty good tandem there.
Yeah, Carson Palmer. Phillip Rivers is another one who's sort of in that mid-range at $5,800. It's pretty cheap as well. But let's talk about receivers. The most tagged in terms of starts this week, heading into week 2, is Julio Jones, Chris Hogan, Brendan Cooks, Jordy Nelson, Cooper Kupp, Larry Fitzgerald, Marquise Lee, Keenan Allen, Randall Cobb, and Mike Evans. 11 start tags for Mike Evans. Mike Evans is my favorite fade of the week in terms of receiver. I just like the way that the Bears shut down elite-style receivers and let everyone else beat up on them. They don't have a very good run defense either, so they don't necessarily need to use Mike Evans too much this week. So what I'm thinking about at wide receiver, like, I didn't see Antonio Brown's name on that list. I didn't see Doug Baldwin's name on that list. Adam Thielen's name wasn't on that list. I feel like those 3 guys, along with Larry Fitzgerald, are all excellent plays.
Yeah, I think Thielen would be a top for me right there. Those 3 guys that you mentioned. I don't know about Seattle. Doug Baldwin, I mean, it makes sense in tournaments after what we saw from Seattle last week. A lot of people are going to say, no, thank you. I'm not quite ready to go down that route. So, yeah, Doug Baldwin against San Francisco, it could be fine. I would rather trust some of the expensive receivers like Julio Jones. And the same reason that you mentioned, people aren't going to play Julio Jones because he didn't do a lot last week. But Chicago shuts down number 1 wide receivers. Now he faces Green Bay. Green Bay doesn't have very good quarterbacks. He put up 180 yards on them in the playoffs. You go back to 2014, he had 240 yards on them. You can play Julio Jones by himself without Matt Ryan, and you're going to be just fine. You can put them together. It's going to be kind of expensive, and you'll probably be fine as well. I like paying up for Julio Jones.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone's sort of on board with that, where they're saving so much money paying for these mid-price running backs. I would expect to see Julio Jones as the highest-owned receiver in the Millionaire Maker.
What about Chris Hogan? Do you think they're going to have comparable ownership? I want to say that they're going to be, in reality, put their names together, they shouldn't be side by side. But this Chris Hogan train it's getting out of control. The slot receiver thing against the Saints. And he might not even be in the slot half the time.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, I mean, Chris Hogan, I think it's just because when people play him and he goes off, he really goes off. Long touchdowns, multiple touchdowns, and this is a game where you can project that out a little bit in terms of scoring. That, hey, maybe he's the one who gets in on it. I'd just prefer to pay up and just pay for Cooks instead. I don't really trust Chris Hogan, but I understand what the allure is. But if he's going to be a super highly owned player this week, I already mentioned Jarvis Landry. I think he's a nice pivot off of him. I prefer Thielen anyway in a game where you would expect that the Vikings have to throw a little bit more. It's just weird that all these guys who got buried week one, have no ownership this time around. Yet Hogan didn't do anything week one, and now everyone wants to play him. It's really bizarre.
Yeah, and if you look at Hogan, he had 3 good games last year, and those 3 games were because he had 3 big plays. He really, I mean, it's a good point that you make that we are trusting Chris Hogan, and we like Chris Hogan, and meanwhile we've got guys who performed over their entire careers. Like, I don't trust that guy this week. This is thought he over. Like, we'll talk about if you want to talk about defenses. I look at the defenses real quick, just glancing through, and I don't see a lot that I like. But in reality, all the defenses played really well last week. But for some reason, I go through and like, I don't like that position for him. It's weird because I want to say a lot of regular players are weighing week one way, way, way too much.
Well, let's talk about those defenses for a sec. The top 5 expect to be sort of chalky defense. Well, the top 3 will definitely be super chalky, a lot like the Rams last week, which still turned out to be the play. The Arizona Cardinals against the Colts coming at number 1, 16 start tags for them. Then we go to the Ravens. They also have 16. They're tied for first. Seattle, the Chargers, and then the Raiders. I feel like those are all really good plays. The only other ones I could see kind of going with was if I was going to use Darren Sproles, I would use the Eagles D with him, and I'm going to play a few Tyreek Hill lineups, and I'm going to pair him up with the Kansas City defense, just see if I can get some double points out of it.
I could see going with the Kansas City defense with their special teams. I agree. It's a chalk week with defense, which, again, it's ridiculous because we watched a lot of defenses play pretty well last week. And we're giving way too much credit to a lot of offenses that haven't really played really well. I don't really like the Ravens. I think that they benefited from a Cincinnati Bengals offensive line that was terrible. They've got those interceptions that they got were because Dalton had hands in his face and was just flinging the ball up there. So Ravens may be a little bit inflated, I'll say. But I have no problem rolling out the Arizona Cardinals chalk. It's just a terrible team. Tolzien probably won't play. I wish he would. He should have thrown 3 pick sixes if it wasn't for Moncrief basically mugging the defender to stop another pick 6. And then you've got Jacoby Brissett. He doesn't know the playbook. You can't just come. First of all, he's just an average quarterback at that. Maybe not even average. And his offensive line is terrible. He's not familiar with his weapons. He's not familiar with the playbook. You could see Frank Gore running the ball 30 times in this game because they just have nothing else that they can do.
But you can also see a situation where they get down by a ton and are forced to throw. I think that's why I kind of like the Raiders defense a little bit too. I actually, real life, hate the Raiders defense. But if you're going to force Josh McCown to throw the ball 40 times in a game, I'll take any defense against that. There's turnovers and sacks to be had there.
Do you think it'd be too cute? And I'm sure someone's going to, because defense is kind of bare. There's the obvious chalk. What about going with one of these defenses in the shootout? Dare I say New England? Is that crazy that someone's going to try to do that and try to maybe, because there's going to be a lot of passing and the Patriots are decent size, 7-point favorite last I checked on the road, which is pretty interesting, which means the Saints probably going to be throwing the ball a lot. Drew Brees is really good at home, but he still can throw picks as well.
Yeah, I'm one who usually likes to lean towards taking defenses against teams that I expect to pass a lot. I'm not too concerned about the amount of points that get put up. Generally speaking, if it's 28 points, you can overcome that. Kind of like it was one of the reasons I was in on Philly last week was I didn't really think that, Washington's fine, but they're going to turn the ball over even if they do score some points. It's not the end of the world. The fantasy ramifications are still going to end up in your favor. I can just feel like that can go so wrong for you that there's really no need to chance it.
Yeah, there isn't. I think we saw a perfect example last week. There was no reason at all not to play the LA Rams, and still, 75% of the field didn't play the Rams. If you played the Rams, you were fine last week. And so again this week, I'm going to play the Cardinals. I'm not going to overthink it. That will be my other chalk. Give me Ty Montgomery. Give me the Cardinals. Call me a fool. I don't care. I'll take risks on my other picks.
Well, and if there's a week that you can actually pay up for a defense, a $4,100 defense, this is the week as we talked about because the pricing is a bit softer. There's a lot of good mid-range plays that you can have. Let's talk about the chalk quarterbacks right now. When we go to the top, number 1 is going to be Tom Brady, 27 starts. The next closest is Phillip Rivers at 19. Matt Ryan, Carson Palmer, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, Russell Wilson. Jared Goff comes in at number 8, Alex Smith, and then Sam Bradford. For me, in cash games, I'm just paying up for Aaron Rodgers and being on my way. I'm going to play him with Ty Montgomery. I don't care. I think they're going to score a ton of points. I'm not going to... A $7,000 Aaron Rodgers is pretty good, so I'm going to stick it there. The one that I'm surprised that isn't on this list, and maybe because they're too high of favorites, people are talking about Marshawn Lynch, but this could be a really nice spot for Derek Carr just to go bonkers on the Jets.
Yeah, in GBP, I mean, obviously not in cash, but the big fear with Derek Carr, and it's the same fear with Marshawn Lynch, they're 14-point favorites. This game could be over at halftime, which means probably going to run the ball. And if you're the Oakland Raiders, do you really want to roll Marshawn Lynch out there for the second half when you don't have to? I know he's a beast, but the beast has missed a year, so I really don't think he's good. They've got two other running backs anyway. Then again, though, if they do get up by 2 or 3 touchdowns, it's probably because Derek Carr went crazy. No one's going to own him because they're going to be scared away by that point line. He's not necessarily cheap. Derek Carr is a really interesting GPP play. And if you play him, you pretty much got to go with Cooper, don't you?
Oh, yeah, you go Cooper, Crabtree, Carr. That's the triple stack that you roll out there. Just no one's really going that way this week.
Yeah, you're going to get lower ownership. Is that going to be lower ownership than Palmer, Fitzgerald, and J.J. Nelson? I think it will be.
It might be only because Fitzgerald's going to have a pretty decent ownership tag along with him.
Who do you feel more comfortable with, Carr or Palmer? Pricing considered.
Derek Carr for sure.
Even with pricing?
Yeah, pricing factored in and getting those 3 guys against the matchup. I mean, you can almost make the same case that you just made for Derek Carr, where they get up by so much that, they take them all out. Arizona could do the same thing. I mean, the Colts are no good. I don't expect that to happen, but it's definitely on the table.
I mean, we're getting pretty deep in the weeds here, but if I got Palmer and he's having a good game, I leave him in just to get him in the flow, to build his confidence after that first terrible game. Maybe you want to get him 4 to 5 touchdowns to get him feeling really good. I mean, that's pretty crazy just to say, oh, yeah, Palmer's going to have 4 touchdowns this week, but it's something that could happen against that terrible Indianapolis team.
I'm surprised to see Aaron Rodgers not as the number 1 tag QB that Tom Brady is. Like, does there feel like there's anyone safer than Aaron Rodgers at this point?
It's got to be the ESPN New England bias of 10 days for Belichick to prepare, and Tom Brady lost his last game, and they're playing in the Dome. There's a lot of hype train pushing Tom Brady. He's pretty consistent. I guess against the Packers, they didn't look really good in the first half, but then again, they were facing Seattle.
Put it this way, if Brady's going to be the highest owned quarterback, which he seems to be, and Breeze is tagged down at 7, I think I'd just play Breeze instead of Brady. Like, really, what's the difference?
Yeah, and you might have a couple interceptions for Breeze, but you're not going to – I don't see Breeze getting touchdowns poached by Adrian Peterson or Mark Ingram. The Saints side's probably going to have to pass. They're going to have to pass for touchdowns. Sure, they could run the ball in, but if I had to do a probability, I would see it more likely happening from the New England side, giving up Gillislee touchdowns and hurting the Brady. But you're right, really the clear-cut guy, which surprising that he's not ranked number 1, it's Aaron Rodgers. We overlook the fact that he can run the ball as well. Yeah. And he will run the ball, and those are just easy points.
All right, finally, tight ends before we get out of here. The top 3 by a pretty definitive margin are Charles Clay, Coby Fleener, and Rob Gronkowski, then Zach Ertz. Those are probably going to be your 4 chalk guys. I see no reason to go away from Ertz in terms of cash games this week if you can afford to pay up. Charles Clay, just based on his reception base, seems like he's going to be pretty good, and other people seem to agree with me on that one at $3,000. Gronk just strikes me as a pure GPP play, but there's one name that's not on this list in the 3rd highest, because everyone's talking about these 2 high projected point totals. You got the Green Bay game with Atlanta, you have the Patriots game with the Saints. The Philly KC game has the 3rd highest projected point total of the week, and no one's going to play Travis Kelce. That seems kind of strange.
That is kind of strange that Travis Kelce is an afterthought, considering he's their number 1 weapon. But a lot of that's because of when we look at that first game against the Patriots, everyone wants to talk about Kareem, and they want to talk about Tyreek Hill, and they want to talk about Alex Smith, or Eric Berry's injured. when does anyone mention Travis Kelce? So he's buried right now. You're probably going to get lower ownership there. Gronkowski could get you 3 touchdowns, but you're paying for those 3 touchdowns, and he could just do nothing in that situation. Charles Clay's got a pretty good reputation with Tyrod Taylor. I have no problem paying $3,000. Who's the I'm blanking on the name. The bottom of the barrel Browns tight end. I think he's 2,500.
Oh, Seth DeValve?
Yeah. What is his fan share ranking?
Well, he's not inside the top 10. Let's keep scrolling here.
Oh, he had 4 catches, 40 yards last week, something like that.
Yeah, he's not inside. He's number 23, number 177 overall for the week.
So he'll be incredibly low owned, and I don't know if he's going to break the bank or break the scoreboard. But if the Baltimore Ravens are favored to be a really popular defense, that means the Browns are going to be playing catch up. Are they a double-digit underdog here in this game?
No, they're only an 8-point underdog.
Only 8. So there's going to be a lot of passing here. And Kaiser, I like when these young quarterbacks target a specific person because they find what they like, and they usually continue that for a couple games. I could see DeValve getting pretty much the same action he got last week as pretty much a punt, low ownership. I'm not crazy about a lot of these tight ends. Is there one that screams must play for you?
I mean, Clay and Fleener just because of the price, I guess, like if you wanted to do that in cash games. I think Martellus Bennett is a way that you can look to get exposure to that high total game, and people just weirdly aren't. Everyone else from the the high scoring games getting talked up, and Martellus Bennett isn't. I found that kind of strange.
Yeah, Martellus Bennett got a little bit of talk last week and then really just had, 4 catches, something like that, 40 yards. Okay. It's a high-scoring game this week and an easier matchup, so he probably is right there as well with Kelce. Charles, I'm not crazy about any of these guys. Fleener, this is the second year of going through this. All last year, Fleener's he's gonna do it. And then you had all summer people talking like, yeah, now he's got a whole year under his belt with the Saints offense. He's gonna have a big year. And so he had one decent game. I can't do the Fleener thing. It's too early.
Yeah, man, listen, it's just the price. Like, if he catches a touchdown, he returns 3x, basically. So, I mean, I think that's what people are looking at, and they're trying to get cheap pieces of that, 56.5 total game. So, I think that's the way that they want to look at this. I mean, the only other one I can think of on a team, almost like the Thielen thing, like if you wanted to play Kyle Rudolph in GPP, is...
What about the Outlaw?
I don't know. Is he going to do it 2 weeks in a row? I don't want to invest.
Probably not.
Austin Hooper's getting talked up inside the top 10. Like, Austin Hooper's fine, but I'm not. If he's going to be relatively chalky, I'm not playing Austin Hooper.
Well, Hooper is pretty much. I know Martellus Bennett has the track record, and when he was in an offense that was kind of geared toward him in Chicago, he put up some big numbers, and maybe you could see that in Green Bay. But I think Hooper's kind of in the same situation as Bennett. He's going to get boosted from the high-scoring game here. But with Jesse James, he had one big game. Still, that tight end situation in Pittsburgh. Remember Xavier Grimble was supposed to be the guy in Pittsburgh, and we've never seen anything from him. Vance McDonald looked like garbage. Well, maybe not garbage, but he didn't look very good. And he's never really been good. Vance McDonald is basically like Chris Hogan. He's had 3 big games, and that's because he had 3 big plays in each of those games. I don't know. I don't like tight end.
Just get rid of the spot altogether.
It's just, well, last week it was so easy. You just took Zach Ertz, and you knew you were taking Zach Ertz in August. Why can't I have that again?
Well, you can just take Zach Ertz again this week.
I mean, I guess everything is pretty much still there. His price is a little bit more, though.
And there's no Eric Berry now either.
You're right. You know what? Let's just take Zach Ertz again, everybody. Let's see if we can push that 35% even higher.
Yeah, well, his ownership's not going to be as high because he went up $1,800 in terms of pricing. But, Ertz makes a fine cash play. I do think that the play in GPPs is Travis Kelce, though. If you can get Kelce's cheaper than Ertz. He has the bigger play ability. If he's going to score a touchdown, it might be from 60 yards out. Ertz doesn't really have that sort of upside. He's more of a floor PPR specialist when it comes to that. But, I don't know, if you give me 4% Travis Kelce, I'm going to take it.
Yeah, I mean, the touchdown upside's there, just as long as he doesn't throw a flag in the umpire's face.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's always on the table. Overall, before we get out of here, the top 10 at any position right now in terms of tag starts for the week from fansharesports.com. Free to sign up, by the way, if you want to go to the site and get on it. I recommend that everyone go do that. Number 1, Ty Montgomery. Number 2, Tom Brady. Julio Jones, Chris Hogan, Phillip Rivers, Charles Clay, Brandon Cooks, Marshawn Lynch, Jaquiz Rogers, Kobe Fleener are your top 10. Expect all 10 of those guys to be pretty chalky in the Millionaire Maker in week 2.
That's I printed the list out a little bit early, and Phillip Rivers, well, I guess last evening, Phillip Rivers has jumped up 7 spots since last night.
Yeah, I mean, you can. This is going to change. Friday afternoon, Saturday afternoon, even Sunday morning. Like, I think the Phillip Rivers buzz got started. I think Al actually put out his ESPN column, and boom, he hyped up Phillip Rivers, and all of a sudden, people are talking about Phillip Rivers. It only takes one little thing, weirdly enough, to get everyone on the same groupthink type of mentality. So, I think that's where that came from.
Miami is a mess too. I don't know if a lot of people know this. They think, oh, well, they got an extra week to prepare. That's not the case. A lot of their players were actually in Miami riding out the storm. Some were in Houston. They haven't been in contact at all. I just don't see how this team's going to know what they're doing when they go out for this game. This is a bad situation. And you talked about the Chargers being a pretty good play. The defense, the only person that benefits is probably Jay Cutler, just to get an extra week to learn the playbook. But they're going to be really rusty.
Pearce Dietrich, follow him on Twitter at Race4ThePrize, and all of his work up on DKPlaybook.com, where he's going to be doing some football. You still doing NASCAR this time of year?
Yeah, I got some NASCAR stuff to do this weekend.
All right, so go check that out as well. You can follow me at the PME on Twitter. Remember, subscribe to the Pat Mayo Experience on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and Audio Boom under the Pat Mayo Experience. And of course, for all the video versions, go to YouTube.com and subscribe to the DraftKings page. I'm Pat Mayo. Good luck in week 2. I'll see you next time.